What's going on YouTube? Welcome to my RC channel. Today we're going to have a look at the iRange IRX4. This is a 2.4 GHz 4-in-1 multi-protocol module. It allows you to bind and control a huge number of aircrafts, vehicles, and even receivers from other big name radios. It's definitely a tool of convenience, especially if you already own a lot of transmitters. Instead of lugging around a box full of radios, you lug around just one. This one module, which remains inside your radio, so it doesn't get in the way of everyday functionality, just like the Ronco rotisserie.
You said it?
Well, until you need to use it, and that's merely a few button pushes away. There is an ever-growing list of compatible protocols, so this device is fairly future-proof so long as there is a community for it. The IRX4 already comes preloaded with a ton of protocols, so I would only do the flash if you really need to, as there's a risk of destroying the device altogether. FYI, it's not difficult, but there is some soldering involved. The IRX4 will work with all FreeSky models, Futaba, FlySky, and Turnigy 9X models. As for other transmitters, as long as it uses a 5-pin module bay and it uses openTX software, I see no reason why it shouldn't work as well. Alright, so let's take a closer look. Here is the package as it arrived. Well, actually it came in your typical Banggood packaging, which is wrapped in foam inside a black plastic bag. Inside you'll find just the module and an antenna. Really not much to it. Here's a 2.4 GHz antenna with an SMA connection. And of course the IRX4 multi-protocol module. Unlike its predecessor, it comes with an injection molded plastic casing which sits flush inside the Taranis X9. It sits so flush that it's quite difficult to remove. In fact, it's almost impossible to do so unless you remove the back cover. But to be honest, it's really not that big of a deal, since it's powered off when it's not in use. In addition, there are LEDs in the module that lights up when it's being used. It's pretty empty inside, no wonder it's so light. In total, including the antenna, this multi-module weighs around 40 grams. Under the shielding is the STM32 chip with 128 kilobytes of onboard memory. Unlike its predecessor, this board has plenty of room for future updates, allowing you to store a ton of protocols without having to recompile, making this module a heck of a lot more convenient. In previous multi-protocol modules, because of the limited storage space, you would have to remove the modules you weren't using and add the ones you were, which can be a real big hassle. Since there was no instructions included in the package, I had to do a little research to figure out where to start. This was probably the most difficult part, that is, finding good information. Once I found a good source, the setup was fairly straightforward. Simply plug it into an openTX compatible radio and flash your radio with a preloaded multi-protocol firmware. I think the easiest and quickest way to get everything up and running is to use your microSD card to flash your radio. To do this, we'll be using a pre-compiled multi-protocol firmware. For this tutorial, we'll be flashing to version 2.1.9. So start out by removing your microSD card from the back of your Taranis. Next, you'll want to download the multi-protocol firmware from this site. I'll link to the download in the description below. There are two different firmwares. One is for the original X9D and the other is for the Plus, so make sure you choose the right one. Just to be safe, make sure to create a backup of your microSD card onto your desktop in case something goes awry. Copy the firmware over to the firmware section on the microSD card. Put the card back into your Taranis and put it into bootloader mode. To do this, hold both bottom and inner trim buttons down while powering the Taranis on. Hit enter, select the firmware you copied over, wait until it's finished writing, and that's it. Now that you have the new firmware, the multi-selection should be accessible. Before you start adding models, you're going to want to change the default order to AETR. Most, if not all, toy grade quads use this as their default. You'll find this setting under Radio Setup. Alright, so to create a new model, select the open slot. Here I have 6 selected.
press and hold enter, create new model, choose the quadcopter, and here you're just going to want to press page until you get to the end. Hold enter to confirm, and that's pretty much it. Now you're going to want to change a few more settings. Press up, once you get to internal RF, hold that or press that and turn it off. Go to external RF, turn this one on, look for MULT, there we go.
And this is where you choose the protocol you want to use. There's also an auto bind feature which will allow the module to automatically bind to the device you're trying to connect to. Without this, you would have to go into the settings and manually bind the aircraft every time you want to connect to it. So it's definitely a big convenience to have the auto bind turned on. Alright, so here I'm gonna connect to a Hubsan H107. Just gonna go ahead and change it in the settings. Also, I'm gonna turn on auto bind. Alright, so we should be good to go. Now we just power off the transmitter and power on the quad. Alright, let's power the radio back up, and since we enabled auto bind, it should pair right up.
Welcome to openTX.
Oh shit!
Oops.
Well, it's good to know that it works.
Alright, so I found out that it did work, but roll was backwards. So here's how I fixed that. Go to model setup and press page until you get to outputs. Find out which channel is roll first. To do that, just go left and right. This is showing that roll is channel 1. So what you want to do is
move the roll stick left and right, and the corresponding channel will show an arrow moving. All we need to do is press enter on channel 1 and scroll over to the arrow, press enter again. Doing so will invert the arrow and with it the direction of the channel. So after I inverted channel 1, the H107 flew great. I took it outside for a quick test flight and everything works as it should. I didn't fly too far away, but I'm happy with the range. I think overall, very cool device. I highly recommend this for anyone who owns a bunch of aircrafts. This will make you feel so much better to not have to deal with the clutter of owning multiple transmitters. It's a good feeling. And with that being said, thank you for watching, and as always, happy flying.